Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today I'm going to use a ruler that is a 10 degree. Now, when we think of using these wedge type rulers, we think of making circles. Well, you can do more than just circles with them, and we're going to make a quick and easy table runner. And you'll be able to use up scrap fabric and just a piece of batting that you have left over. So the size is all going to be up to you. And it's going to be very simple. It's a simple project for a beginner or for something that you just want to get done. The wedge ruler I'm going to use today is from So Easy. It is a 10 degree wedge ruler. The first measurement starts with 3 and goes up to 25. That actually is the 3-inch mark. So if you were to measure beyond that, you would have your 2 and 1. So the ruler is not 25 inches. It's 25 inches. Subtract that end. The ruler also has some other degrees on them, so you can use it for a lot of other things. It has some nice clean marks, so it's a great ruler to have in your stash. To start with, I'm going to start with a piece of batting that's been left over. You can see I've just cut it off from another project. You're going to need a piece of back fabric that will fit that piece. And this is just some leftover fabric that I've had from another project. It's this really cute nautical fabric. It's from Dear Stella. And you can see I even have pieces that have little pieces cut out. The only thing you need to worry about is that your fabric scraps is going to be the width of this batting. To prepare your batting, give it a light press or steaming it so that there's no wrinkles in it. And it has to be clean on both sides. You're going to need to have this batting basted onto the back so that the back is good side facing out. And baste this any way you'd like. I like to use just a little bit of a spray adhesive underneath, and then I won't have to worry about pins. If you're going to use pins, make sure you pin from the top because you're not going to see the back as you sew this. The next thing I'm going to do is draw 2 lines just to give me a starting area and to keep me straight. And I'm going to draw right on top of the batting. Draw a straight line down the one edge. The next edge is one of those long edges. And just draw the line all the way down to the other edge. Those 2 lines are only going to be a guide. So you can do a fairly light pencil line and it's going to all be trimmed off after it's entirely done. Now I need to decide what part of the wedge I want to cut. And you can cut it in any area that you want. So you need to just choose an area and we're going to cut it into that area. I like to have a nice small point, so I'm going to start right at the very end. And I'm going to take this ruler and I'm going to pull it all the way along and see which is my biggest measurement. My biggest measurement is on this 15-inch mark. So I'm going to cut my wedges with that mark. So you can put your back out of the way and cut your fabric. So I'm going to take some of my fabrics and stack them together that are the closest to size. And as long as it's enough for me to cut, I'm going to cut them all together. The pieces that have cuts out of them, I'm going to do them individual. So I know my pieces are going to be big enough to hit that 15-inch mark on my ruler. Straighten up 2 edges and don't worry about the rest. I now am going to be able to cut the wedges from this pile. You need to cut your fabric so that the straight of the grain stays to the center of that line. So you're not going to start with the ruler on the angle. I'm going to use the straight lines on the ruler. So I have one straight line at the top, the straight line at the bottom. And you need to cut down the side of that ruler. When you've cut that first piece, this edge you can discard. You then have your first pile of wedges. You'll take the ruler, turn it, making sure that you have 2 straight lines on the ruler, and you can cut the next edge. Flip the ruler again and cut the next wedge. And you're going to be able to cut all of the pieces by moving the ruler. With the pieces cut out of them, I'm still going to use the same ruler and cut whatever I can out of these pieces. My cut is going to be the same as my first wedge. The first piece I'm going to put so that the center of this wedge is going to go in the middle of that line. And I'm just going to eyeball it for now. So I know that's going to be my first piece. Now I'm going to lay out the fabric as I see fit. So I've just laid them out into the order that I want. The wedges are going to be sewn opposite. So I have a short end on one side and a short end on another. And you can see how they'll all go together. This is the line that I drew. So I'm going to start with this piece of fabric. So I'm going to stack, starting with that, and just stack them right on top. This way I'm going to be able to go right to the machine, and I won't have to leave the machine because I'm going to be able to use them right from here. The first piece is going to go over the batting, and that center line that you drew is going to go down the center of that wedge. But without having to measure, you're going to be able to use that wedge ruler. Take that center line of the ruler and place it on that center line, and using that other edge, you're just going to be able to match up all the straight edges. Now you can either draw a line on the batting or draw a line off the batting. That line there that you just drew is going to be a placement line. So you're going to be able to take that wedge, and that edge is going to go right along that drawn edge. So we now know that the center of that wedge is right in that center line. And pin that down. I have my stack all ready to go, so I'm going to be able to actually just take this right to the machine. This is going to be the next piece, and I want it to go right there. So I'm going to take that and flip it so those two raw edges are going to match. And I'm going to stitch down a 1/4 inch. And you don't have to worry about if it's a scant 1/4 inch or a big 1/4 inch. Just stitch it down. So there's that first seam. Fold that towards the batting. You have quilted right through all the layers, so you will not need to quilt this when it's done. And this is going to be trimmed off after. From my stack, I'm going to be able to get my next piece. I'm going to take that piece and flip it and match up that straight edge and stitch that 1/4 inch down. Now you can start right off the fabric and go right down and go right off the fabric. As you stitch the pieces down and fold them over, make sure you have a nice clean spot here of batting, because if you have any threads, you're not going to be able to take them off after. I take the stack and I put it right beside my machine, and I know I'm going to be able to grab from it right in order. And because I have them opposite, the short side, the wide side, short all the way along, I'm not going to get them twisted, so I don't have to think a lot about it. But I'm always going to have to maintain a wide piece to the small piece. And if you're off on the edges here, don't worry about it. We're going to trim this down. And to make it really easy to sew, take this end and just roll it, because this piece here is going to be stitched. So this is going to go in the arm of the machine. So as you stitch, you're going to be able to unroll it. So just keep it rolled as you add your pieces and unroll. So sew all of the pieces on right to the end. And when you come to that last piece, you need a piece that's going to cover all of that batting. Keep in mind that the longer the strip is, the more pieces you're going to need than what you have laid out, because you're going to have a seam allowance taken with each one of these pieces. My batting was 37 inches long, so I needed 25 of these wedges. And that's because I started in that small piece. So make sure you cut extra so that you have enough to cover all of the batting. When you have this all done, take it to the iron and press it. And that's going to take all of those seams and sink them together. When it's pressed nice and flat, we're going to be able to square it up. Now normally you would just cut it and square it up with the rotary cutter, but I like to do it with a pen or a pencil first, and that way I know my lines are going to be fine and I'm not going to have it crooked. So I'll use 2 rulers. I'll take the 2 rulers and I butt them together so that I have one long straight line. In my mind, I know that the center of this very first one is a straight line. Now you're going to be able to adjust it how you want, but just keeping that in mind, you're going to be able to line up your ruler. I want to make sure that I have batting underneath all of it so I can actually feel where that batting is. I'm going to draw the line. Now that that line is done, I'm going to be able to square it up. Still, I'm going to draw it instead of cut it. And if this line is not going to work, it's easier to take that line off than it is to put the fabric back on if you cut it. That's why I like to draw my lines first. When I have my cut lines drawn, I'm going to stitch it on the machine to secure all of these pieces down so that as I'm working with it, none of them are going to come undone. So I'm going to use that drawn line as my cut line, and I'm going to stitch in a very small seam allowance all the way around. So that's going to be my cutting line. So I've stitched inside. Now when I trim that out, all of those seams are going to be secured. Now you can trim it. If you don't want the ends squared, you can trim them to that point, and it still looks really nice. The entire table runner is now quilted and ready for binding. And with the binding done, you have the table runner that is quilted and done. This makes a great project for a beginner quilter, or if you're just wanting to get a quick project done. You don't have to worry about your 1/4 inch seam allowance, you don't have to worry about matching seams, and it looks far more complicated than it really is. The binding's done and we're ready to go. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.